Good morning. How's everybody today? Hope you are all well. This is our third lecture in our series, and we will be starting where we left off, which is page 12, please. And we're at the preschool years. The preschool years. If you could please just follow in your books, your textbooks. By the age of 4, most children can ask questions, give commands, report real events. So when we first, the last lecture we talked about, we included the first 3 years. Now, when the children are by the age of 4, they can ask questions, maybe an annoying one, but they'll ask questions, give commands, they'll ask for things, report real events, and create stories about imaginary ones. Now, the creative side and imaginary side now is a lot more lively. It's a lot more involved, using the correct word order and grammatical markers most of the time. And at this stage, they are able to use the correct word order, as we saw in negation and as we saw in the questions. In fact, it is generally accepted that by age 4, children have acquired the basic structures of the language or languages spoken to them in the early years. By this time, or by this age, children will be able to use the language that they have been, the language in their environment, they've been around, and they can use it correctly. 3 and 4 years olds continue to learn vocabulary at a rate of several words a day. Several words a day. So they learn a lot of words a day, maybe between 7 and 10 words a day, if you want numbers. They begin to acquire less frequent and more complex linguistic structures, such as passives and relative clauses. And at this age, they also start to learn the more complex grammatical structures, passive voice, relative clauses, that kind of thing. They move away from the simple repetitive structures. Much of the children's language acquisition effort in the late preschool years is spent in developing their ability to use language in a widening social environment. So, what children at this age, what they put their efforts in is to try to use the language that they have learned in a more social environment, with friends, with family, that kind of thing. They use language in a greater variety of situations. Now they have a lot more situations where they can practice their language. Maybe they're out with friends, maybe they're visiting family, maybe they're on a trip, that kind of thing. They interact more often with unfamiliar adults. Now that they are older, 3 to 4 years old, they have the self-confidence to interact with adults who they don't know or they have not interacted with before. They're not as shy now. They would like to know a lot more about the world, the people around them as well. They begin to talk sensibly. Their chatting or their conversations, they make a lot more sense, especially on the telephone. To invisible grandparents. Young children will pick up the phone and talk to invisible grandparents. Their mother will probably say, "There's your granddad," and they can start to talk. Younger children do not understand that their telephone partner cannot see what they see. That's a trick about young children and the telephones. What they, in their mind, the person they are talking to on the phone can actually see what they're seeing. They don't know that they can't see that. They can't see what they are seeing. They acquire the aggressive or cajoling language that is needing to defend their toys in the playground. They also acquire a language which is new to them for something they might need to defend themselves. Maybe in the school playground, in the classroom, if somebody wants to take their pencil, somebody wants to take their food. This is the aggressive or the cajoling language. They show that they have learned the difference between how adults talk to babies and how they talk to each other. And they also know the difference between when an adult is speaking to an adult or when an adult is speaking to a child or a baby. They use this knowledge in elaborate pretend play. They pretend to play when they are playing. They pretend to be adults. Girls will pretend to be their mothers, and young boys will pretend to be their fathers. They do this as well as they change their voice. If you notice, when they play and they try to be someone who's older, there's also a change in voice, a change the way they talk. Using these different voices in this way, they explore and begin to understand how and why language varies. When they use them in their play and in their environment, they start to understand the different varieties of language. What kind of language can be used in different situations. This is all part of the learning process. In the preschool years, children also begin to develop metalinguistic awareness. In the preschool years, children have something they start to develop which is called the metalinguistic awareness. What is metalinguistic awareness? The next sentence is the definition, and it's important. If you please, put a line underneath it or an asterisk next to it. The metalinguistic awareness is the ability to treat language as an object separate from the meaning it conveys. So metalinguistic awareness, it means that you have the ability to treat language as a separate object from the meaning it conveys. So the word, now they start to understand that the meaning and words are separate things. The word on its own is an entity and the meaning is separate from it. It's an object separate from the meaning. 3-year-old children can tell you, it's silly to say drink the chair because it doesn't make sense. However, although they would never say cake the eat, they would never tell you cake the eat, they are less sure that there is anything wrong with it. So 3-year-olds will know that it is silly to drink the chair, it's impossible, but cake the eat sounds, I mean, there's a cake and you eat it, they can't tell you, they're not too sure what's wrong with this sentence. They may show that they know it's a bit odd. They can show you, well, it looks a bit strange, it's a bit weird, it looks a bit odd, but they don't know exactly what's going on. But they will focus mainly on the fact that they can understand what it means. The most important thing about cake they eat is they understand what it means. And that's why it's quite difficult for them to work out why or what is wrong with this sentence. 5-year-olds, on the other hand, know that drink the chair is wrong in a different way from cake the eat. 3-year-olds, they can't tell you why this one's wrong and why is that. But 5-year-olds, they know that that one is different from the other. They can tell you that one is silly, but the other one is the wrong way around. They know that now. So when 5-year-olds, they know the word order a lot better than the 3-year-olds. Language acquisition in preschool years is impressive. You'll have to be impressed by the way the children acquire the language. It is also noteworthy that children have spent thousands of hours interacting with language. You must take into account, noteworthy, that children spend thousands and thousands of hours interacting with language. At a young age, they have nothing in their life. They are absolutely free. All they're doing is interacting with the language. Participating in conversations, eavesdropping on other conversations. You know what eavesdropping means? Is when, say, your parents are having a conversation in the next room, they don't want you to hear about, but you go and drop an ear. It means eavesdropping, to drop an ear. You listen without them knowing. So a lot of young children do this a lot, I am sure you know. Being read to, my father or mother, they like to read to the children, watching television, etc. A quick mathematical exercise will show you just how many hours children spend in language-rich environments. If children are awake for 10 or 12 hours a day, we may estimate they are in contact with the language of the environment for 20,000 hours or more by the time they go to school. So, by the time children go to school, they will have had 20,000 hours or more being exposed to language, which is a lot of time. Although preschool children acquire complex knowledge and skills, since children, even in the preschool phase, will acquire a lot of knowledge and skills for language and language use, not just the language, but how to use the language. The school settings requires new ways of using language and brings new opportunities for language development. Now, the school is different in the preschool years, while the children, you have to remember, are at home with their parents. They're being spoiled. They can have what they want. They don't really have to talk. There's no pressure on them to get things right. They can get things wrong and people or their parents will laugh. So the environment, the setting at home is going to be drastically different from the setting at school. The important bits to remember is the meta-linguistic awareness in the preschool years. Children will start to know that the language, or have the ability to treat language as an object which is separate from the meaning it conveys. All right, now let's have a look at the school years, what happens in the school years. Children develop the ability to use language, to understand others, and to express their own meanings in the preschool years. This is before school. Children develop the ability to use language and to understand others, to have to talk, to have a conversation with other people, and they have the ability to express their meaning in the preschool years. And in the school years, this ability expands and grows. It becomes bigger and larger. Learning to read gives a major boost to metalinguistic awareness. One of the most important aspects of the development of language acquisition is the ability to read. When children start to read, it's like they opened Pandora's box. There's so many things that they can achieve after learning the skill of reading. It boosts the metalinguistic awareness. They'll have more vocabulary, more ways to express their meanings, open themselves to a whole new world. Seeing words represented by letters and other symbols on a page leads children to a new understanding. Now, children have a new relationship with words. Now they can see that the words on the page are represented by letters and other symbols on a page leads children to a new understanding that language has a form as well as meaning. Now children will start to understand that language, there is a form, that the word has a certain form and there is a meaning. Reading reinforces the understanding. And more reading will only provide support to understanding that language has, understanding that a word is separate from the thing it represents. Metalinguistic awareness again. Unlike 3-year-olds, children who can understand that the is a word just as house is. Unlike 3-year-olds who don't know that the is a word just like house, they understand that caterpillar is longer word than train. Understand that the word caterpillar, and it's not the shoes by the way, Caterpillar is actually an insect. Is the longer word than train, even though the object it represents, the insect, is substantially shorter. So children will know now, as part of their metalinguistic awareness development, that the word caterpillar in its form as a word is longer than the word train. But as an object, it is much shorter. It is much shorter. Metalinguistic awareness also includes the discovery of such things as ambiguity. What does it mean to ambiguity? What does it mean to be ambiguous? When something is not really clear, you have to sort of figure out, guess the meaning. There's a little bit of ambiguity about the situation. Knowing that words and sentences can have multiple meaning, and the knowledge that words and sentences can have many meanings gives children access to word jokes. Now they start to understand there's comedy, there's jokes, we can use words in different ways. Trick questions, I love trick questions, and riddles, puzzles, which they love to share with their friends and family. Obviously, when a child, if they learn something new at school, especially from the friend, if it's a trick, if it's a puzzle, if it's a riddle, they always love to come back at home, and the first thing they will do is they will try it with friends and family. One of the most impressive aspects of language development in the school years is the astonishing growth of vocabulary. One of the things that we can touch on, or that we can actually see happening in the school years, is the astonishing amount of vocabulary growth that comes with it. Children enter school with the ability to understand and produce several thousand words. They enter school with the ability to produce several thousand words. And thousands more will be learned at school. In both the spoken and written language at school, words such as homework or ruler appear frequently in situations. In both the spoken and written language at school, the language that is touched upon on this subject, again, the language in school is going to be different from the language they hear at home. At home is how are you, how is this, what's that. People are nice to the child at school. They're not telling him what to do as they would do at school. Now, at school, he will have to take orders and he will have to follow rules. So, words such as homework and ruler appear frequently. He listens and he hears these all the time. If you're in a classroom, you're going to hear you have homework, or please give me the ruler, the pencil, in situations where their meaning is either immediately or gradually revealed. These words, they appear in the environment or situations which is close to the child. And he can learn these words either gradually or immediately. It doesn't have to. It can be either one. Words like population or latitude, they occur less frequently, but they are made important by their significance in the academic subject matter. Words like population and latitude, they are less frequently appear or used in the classroom, but they carry the importance through their significance in the academic subject that they have to study. So easy words like ruler and homework, who are not easy but frequent words, children can learn them either immediately or gradually, because you listen to this more than once and you probably hear it again and again. Words that are less frequent, like latitude, population, children will learn these because of their significance in the subject. Vocabulary grows at a rate between several hundred and more than 1,000 words a year. Vocabulary grows at a rate of several hundred and more than 1,000 words a year. Yes, you learn between 700 and 1,000 or 1,500 words each year, depending, I think, would largely depend on how much you read and what variety of reading text that you have. Depending mainly on how much and how widely children read. Nagy, Herman, and Anderson, 1985. The kind of vocabulary growth required for school success is likely to come from both reading for assignments and reading for pleasure. So, if you want successful vocabulary growth, there has to be a mix between reading for school and reading for your own pleasure. If you find a certain type of text that you enjoy, science fiction, if you like fiction, if you like action novels, anything, if you like geographical books, I don't know. I mean, the best thing to do is to actually read as much as possible. Find the subject, maybe not necessarily the type of text you like, maybe you find a certain subject, something about history, something about the future, something about your hobby, anything. There's a wide range of books and subjects and hobbies and whatever, but the important thing is, and I think in this day and age we missed the opportunity, especially with smartphones and touch screens and everything being on the internet and that. We don't really read anymore. We need to read, children and even as adults, to improve your vocabulary, to improve the way we express our meaning. We need to read. It's a lost art, I'm afraid. I don't think it is used as much as it was in the past, but I hope that you like, most of you or some of you would like to read and probably have some books at home, and it's a good way to improve your vocabulary. As well as probably most of you I know will be saying that you watch TV, you watch series and you watch movies, or you listen to music. Yes, that can be useful, but the thing about, let's say, TV or movies, if you watch them and if you look at the subtitles at the bottom, and if you want to understand, you will always see that the subtitles are out of context, not with they don't go with what's going on in the show or the movie. And you can actually see this in jokes. If you watch a comedy in English, and you'll find half of the time you don't, if you read the subtitles, you think this is not funny. Why am I not laughing? Why is everybody on the TV think this is hilarious and I don't, and I think this is not funny? It's because it's out of context. We don't have the context. It's not culturally, it's not translated into our culture. It's translated into words, but not the cultural translation or the meaning they're trying to convey. Anyway, so the kind of vocabulary growth required for school success is likely to come from both reading for assignment and reading for pleasure. Whether narrative or non-fiction, D. Gardner suggests, what does he suggest? Or he, sorry, suggests that reading a variety of text, different types and different kinds of texts, is an essential part of vocabulary growth, is an important part of vocabulary growth. Don't just read non-fiction and stick to that, because non-fiction will use the same type of vocabulary in all of the stories. The same goes with fiction. You see, to have variety, you have to have variety of texts. That's the idea. There are words in non-fiction texts. Okay, sorry. Do you suggest that reading a variety of text type is an essential part of vocabulary growth? His research shows, has shown how range of vocabulary in narrative texts is different from that in non-fiction. There are words in non-fiction texts that are unlikely to occur in stories or novels. So, variety, you see, there are words that can be used in non-fiction, you won't find them in narratives or in description. Again, the same applies to texts which are descriptive. They won't find the words, they will use words that you won't find in non-fiction, and so on. Also, in addition, non-fiction tends to include more opportunities to see a word in its different forms. For example, mummy, mummies, and mummified. You can see the word in a different form. Mummy, mummies, and mummified. Here we're talking not mummy as in your mother, but we're talking about the mummy as in the Egyptian pyramids, the mummies that have been there, that are mummified in the graves. The importance of reading for vocabulary growth is seen when observant parents report a child using a new word, but mispronouncing it in a way that reveals it has been encountered only in the written form. So, one important thing about reading for vocabulary growth is seen when, you can see this, when observant parents, when parents notice or report to the teacher or that the child is using a new word, but he is mispronouncing it. Why? Why does that happen? This, it shows or reveals that it has been learned or encountered only in written form. It come in a book. He hasn't heard it, but he's seen it in a book. So maybe that's why he's struggling with the pronunciation. Another important development in the school years is the acquisition of different language registers. Children will acquire different language registers. Children learn how written language differs from the spoken language. That is the language register. What is it? You will learn the difference between the written language and the spoken language. How the language used to speak to the principal, the dean, the head teacher, is different from the language of the playground, and how the language of science report is different from the language of a narrative. Now children will understand that there are different registers in a language. I cannot use my normal tone when I speak to the dean or the principal. At the same time, I can't use the same words to write the science report as well as for a description or a narrative. These are different now. As Terry Piper, 2006, and others have documented, some children will have more to learn if they come to school speaking an ethnic or regional variety of the school language. What does Terry Piper here say? That children, or documented, that some children will have more to learn. Children who, let's say, foreigners or come from a different country, they already have a different language. That means that they have to learn more. If they come to school speaking an ethnic or regional variety of the school language, that is quite different from the one used by the teacher. Yes, this is a different language from the one used by the teacher. Therefore, they will have to learn the language first and then learn the language register, so they will have a lot more work. They will have to learn that another variety, often referred to as the standard variety. They will have to learn another kind of language which is referred to as the standard. Why is it called the standard? Because we use it in schools, we use it in everyday life to get, we use it in the public services. If you want to open a bank account, you use the standard variety. All these normal jobs and normal things that you go on about every day, you will need standard language to use it. is required for successful academic work, and it is required or needed for academic work. Other children arrive at school speaking a different language altogether. And sometimes they don't have a different variety of the language. They can have a different language completely, not from the same country, not just the region. What I mean is, like, some children will come from a different region. Let's say we are in Benghazi. Children who come from a different region would be Tripoli, from the south, that's a different region. A different language or a different country is something else, obviously. For these children, the work of language learning in the early school years presents additional opportunities and challenges. To these children now, this gives them more challenges and opportunities. We will return to this topic when we discuss bilingualism in the early childhood. Bilingualism in the early childhood. All right, now we will have a look at explaining first language acquisition, please. These descriptions of language development from infancy through the early school years show that we have considerable knowledge of what children learn in the early language development. These descriptions or explanations how the language has developed in children from infancy until the early school years shows that we have considerable research or knowledge of what or how children achieve this. More, controversial, however, are questions about how this development takes place. The more controversial questions is, how do children learn? How do they develop? What abilities does the child bring to the task? Does the child having any abilities, does it have an effect on this learning process, on this ability to learn? What are the contributions of the environment? What does the environment contribute? Environment here for the child probably means the house, the family, and in the school years it will probably be the school, playground, and his friends. Since the middle of the 20th century, three main theoretical positions have been advanced. So, since middle of the 20th century, we've got three theoretical positions to explain language development: behaviorist, innatist, and interactional developmental perspectives. So we have the behaviorist view, innatist view, and the interactional development perspective. These three theories we will look at separately, and we will study each one, have a look at what each one says about language learning for children in the early years. All right, thank you. We will stop here today. We'll continue next time. Thank you.